Good evening. I am Dave,
I'm Matt.
and we are here to
Pump you up.
with Jesus.
All right, so we've got a couple requests. You got one on your phone. Do you want to read it or do you want to paraphrase it?
Being that it would take me a couple minutes to find it, in Job, they talk about dinosaurs and that kind of thing.
Okay.
What was yours?
I got a couple requests that we study the book of Job and not just do the finale. Like, don't just jump to that Luke is Darth Vader's son. We might want to, go back to the very beginning and talk about how Darth Vader was made. So,
Gotcha.
Being that that's my Star Wars reference, we got to go to the book of Job.
Had to get that out, didn't you?
Everything's a Star Wars reference.
Pretty much.
Literally. Okay, so everything is jam-packed into Job. We can't go through verse by verse because literally we'd be here till next year.
Yeah.
So we just want to hit the highlights per se because this is, number one, this is a story for us all today as much as when Job went through there. And then you're going to have to stop me because there are so many things that a pastor talks about, and he asks questions over this that are so intriguing.
Kind of goes over our heads a little bit if you're not used to it.
So I hope I don't get long-winded.
Should have brought the shock collar, huh?
Well, it's so interesting to me of something that happens. I bet there's answers out there, but it's hard to get at. All right, so from Job chapter 1, we see in the prologue that Job was a guy who's rich.
One quick thing, too. Job is one of the oldest books written, isn't it, out of the Bible? Or they think it is?
Okay, so a lot of things here are basically verbal, passed down from generation to generation.
Stories.
So we don't know. We honestly don't know because the first 5 books of the Bible, called the Torah, were written by Moses. Okay, Moses writes somewhere in between 1400 and 1100 BC. Somewhere in that range. I'm thinking it's somewhere around 12 myself. So I'm looking at that. There's a lot of history before Moses, and Moses writes it down for the first time. Okay, Book of Job, you don't necessarily know that per se. There are a lot of scholars that will say that it is the first one. So people do put it before the time of Moses, not the time of the creation. But we just don't know. But it is a beautiful piece when you get into chapter 3. It's all poetry, which you love, Dave.
There you go.
And
right next to opera.
Yep. So it actually is singable. If you really want to get into that, and that's all yours. But you look at the Hebrew. I almost brought it. The Hebrew is beautiful. It's very clear. You don't even have to know what you're looking at. It's the way that history is written and the way that poetry is written. Even the Hebrew, you can see it.
Just kind of flows.
Yeah. Well, just the sentence structure is amazing. So looking at here, Job, he's a guy with a lot of money, a lot of kids, a lot of cattle, everything that would make a man.
He's living high on the hog.
Sheep.
Okay, yeah, I guess.
Right? He's got a lot of camels and sheep. All right, so we'll have to stick contextually there because they are Jewish.
Right. Not much into the bacon kind of a thing, are they?
I don't know. At this time, depending on when it was written, he may have not had that restriction. I don't. If it's written after Moses, then he has that restriction. So getting into that, 1 verse 6. One day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. The Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Okay, I don't want to get too far into this, but the intriguing thing is, number one, not too far deep, but this is the Yom. So we don't understand. The angels were just we don't, the yom, same word here is the word in Genesis 1. And so this, when you hear someone say, well, in the Hebrew that you can have 1,000,000 years described by the word yom, this is what they try to use to convince you. Because we simply don't know how this is used. You know, just out of the blue, Satan shows up. Okay? Now the question is he invited up? Because on the other hand, you don't know if...
how would he be able to get back in if he was cast out?
There you go. So yeah, there you go. That poses a small problem. Okay, see? This is where pastors spend too much time. All right. I know. All right. So Satan and the Lord get into this whole thing, and it's the Lord that first says, "Hey, in your going about the earth, did you see this guy named Job? He's a pretty awesome guy." And remember, Satan is the one who hates humans because of their elevation by God. So Satan basically says, well, he loves you because he has a lot of great stuff. So take that away. And so what you get in chapter 1 is that all his kids are dead. All right? And that raiders come and carry away his wealth. Okay? And so he's left with almost nothing. All right? And then... interesting enough is he's left with one person in his family. Do you see who's left in his family?
I think it's his wife, right?
Yeah, in chapter 2, after he gets all kinds of skin nastiness, just put it nastiness, his wife says basically, why don't you just curse God and die?
The devil thought it'd be easier if he just left the wife with him. It'd be more to his advantage,
Dave,
right?
don't even. This is taped. For most of you who are thinking, that's where Dave's going. All right, so we don't know, because actually I was thinking about that as I was brushing my teeth, is that he's left with his wife, but we also have to remember his wife has just lost a bunch of her kids, and if she's going through just trauma, right? This is not a wife being snarky. This could be a wife that's in her pain. She tells him, you did something to cause this. Just get it over with.
I think there's a lot of divorces that stem from a child tragedy like that.
Yeah, we went over that last week, I believe. Okay, and so last part of Job chapter 2, all right, and so Job's 3 friends come in, and they heard about all the troubles right around verse 11. All right, when they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. All right.
Yeah, he had sores and all sorts of stuff on him at this time, didn't he?
He was pretty nasty. He was pretty nasty. I don't want to, this is basically taking the
He was the hurting unit, yeah.
Yeah. So he had been using the pot to cut himself with some of the sores. All right, this guy is not, he's almost unrecognizable kind of thing. Just don't get on that. 7 days and 7 nights, 4 dudes sitting around, if you can imagine, not saying a word to each other. Just sitting there. There's no TV, no radio, no... can you imagine? Can you imagine right now you go to a restaurant and you watch a family and they're all sitting there on their iPhones or whatever and no one says a word. These guys don't have iPhones. They don't have anything like that. They're sitting around and they're not saying a word to each other.
Because they saw how great his suffering was.
Can you imagine that? No, you're going through a major thing. And this is where, I don't want to get too far into it, but this is kind of where, when guys go through, I like what you said there, is that there's a lot of divorces that happen. And you're like, why would you like that? It's because the research shows that men go through just as much emotional heartache, or whatever you want to call it, when a child dies. The problem is that that women want to be comforted and want to
Talk about it.
and a man, if he does
Internalizes
not,
it.
he closes down, and he will just lock himself away. So yeah, you were right on that one. That's why that she, instead of bonding together and coming close,
They're opposites.
yeah, he'll feel rejected by her, and so similar almost is that he is basically locking himself away, and this is what a guy will do during his grief, and that's a problem because women take it personally, all right, and this is what a guy has to do. He's got to think about things. He's got to go down to his third bay in his garage where he has his car, and he's got to lock himself. And this is why, per se, you think about it, and suicides are huge nowadays. Huge. Especially teens are going through the roof. Where I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, women will rely on pills and guys rely on a gun.
Less violent for the women and more.
Well, a gun is more fatal. It gets the job done. Whereas with a woman, if you take pills, you can pump the stomach and you can survive that. Whereas a guy, he just ends it. Where women try to take their lives more, but men are more successful. If you want to say that.
Gotcha.
Okay? So, going back to the book of Job, where did you digress, Dave? See?
Don't take much. Squirrel.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so we are going to go in Job chapter 3. From there on out, Job is trying to analyze what's going on. And he's just like, what? Why? And so he's asking all these questions. And
so is the devil's goal to have Job curse God? Is that
Yes.
okay, that's his main objective.
Okay, because think about this: is who does Satan have the biggest problem with?
Humans.
God.
Well, God, yeah.
All right.
That was my second guess.
We'll get there. All right. So if he's having problems with God, he wants the throne. God creates humans, elevates them to a status that Satan's like, And think about this: is a lot of the angels, they serve men. All right. An angel in the Greek is the word for messenger. All right. They interact with humans, which is kind of scary, actually. All right. So it's their job to interact with humans. Yeah. And Lucifer is not one of those types. All right. He's one of the elites. All right. And there's status in the angel community, and so thereby, Satan sees the status of the humans elevated. He's like, I'm gonna let me have that throne, and I'll make everything great. And so you look at what happens is Satan has every opportunity at this point in heaven to take and try to destroy God on his throne. Problem is, he doesn't. He doesn't. Okay, he can't go against God himself.
Right.
So who does he go to?
Next best thing to hurt him is
Yep.
through us.
Go to his creation. All right. He takes some of the angels. All right, and then plagues all of man. Okay, so he messes with God's creation because he can't mess with the guy himself.
And he takes like a third of them, right? Did they say? Is it in the Bible somewhere?
Yeah, he's a third kind of guy.
Okay, gotcha.
He's a lower third, which is another intriguing thing. But we don't want people to ask that because there's a whole book on that actually. Angelity. Can't even say that right. All right, so we take a look at this, and starting at Job chapter 3, Job asks questions about what did I do, all right? And he laments, or he goes back and says, it'd probably be better if I hadn't even been born, okay? And so they go on this tangent. His three friends do not get things correctly. All right, we were talking about last week where
What'd you do?
yes, all right, it is this like the yin and the yang. It is something where cause and effect, I believe, is what we believe in, and then karma. I forget where that comes from. Is that a?
Is it Hindu?
It may be something that you've upset the balance of things in the world.
And you come back lower the next time you come around.
You get what you did. If you're a bad person, you get bad things.
Right.
Which is not biblical one bit. All right, and so we take a look at this, and all throughout Job, and I'm just going to paraphrase things, is that they're trying to get at what is the cause, what did you do in life that you can say that you did something to really upset God, and God is giving you back for everything that you have done. And see, that's the problem. The problem being is that they search what Job's life is like, and they say, okay, sin is the originator of all evil. And so therefore, if you're sinful, then therefore bad things will happen to you. Okay? And so that's the premise. And we were talking about the Greek gods last week, how if you do, if you pray, if you do whatever, that the gods will be, all right. Mm-hmm. The most famous thing I'm thinking about is I'll try to keep this PG for you, Dave.
Thanks.
Is that in where Israel is now, is that there was actually a cult, I believe, of Baal. And supposedly they have their own temples, and a guy could go to the temple and pay a woman, and so therefore if Baal or God was looking at him and the woman, and it's like, nice, I'll send rain so your crops will grow. So that's got to be a man's invention.
Yeah.
How I don't understand how you can, like, hey ladies, you know what, it's we're just trying to get rain here, all right? It's like,
sure you are.
Mark believes it, see? All right? So, taking a look at that. But Job, go with me to Job chapter. Where is it, sir?
They each have some long conversations back and forth with him, don't they, through there?
Yes, they do. And you can see that they are trying to get, they almost bust out his molecules, and like, okay, let's go with me to Job chapter 19. Job chapter 19. You at home? All right, you're welcome, more than welcome. Job chapter 19. All right, and this is something that you and I will, like, as soon as we get there. All right, and you start reading it, and Job is talking about this is God's doing, and God does nothing wrong. Okay, so could you read Job chapter 19, starting at verse 21, and see if you start picking out something that sounds familiar?
How far do you want me to go?
Keep going.
Have pity on me, my friends. Have pity. For the hand of God has struck me. Why do you pursue me as God does? Will you never get enough of my flesh? Oh, that my words were recorded, that they were written on a scroll, that they were inscribed with an iron tool on lead, or engraved in rock forever. I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. I myself will see him with my own eyes, I and not another. How my heart yearns within me.
All right. Did you start singing right there when you were reading that?
I need some beatbox in the back.
Right.
So, have pity on me. He's asking his friends, why are you hammering on me too? As far as that, why do you pursue
look
me
at
as
25.
God does? I know that my Redeemer lives. That's when he acknowledges that God is everything for him, and he'll take care of him.
When do we sing that?
Well, I caught that song right away.
When do we sing that, Dave? Don't go past that. When do we sing that?
In church.
It's, I mean, I swear, it's like
8:45
pulling stuff
Sunday.
out of him. What day do we love? Okay, in the church, in the pew, on Sunday morning, what Sunday morning?
Easter.
All right. Are you sure, Dave? All right.
I always think of Christ the Lord as risen today for Easter, but yeah,
I mean,
this one isn't bad either.
Crystal Lewis has an amazing version of this. Crystal Lewis, you can look her up and see the video. Great singer. 1995 National Youth Gathering down in San Antonio, Texas, and she did this live. I remember that. Everyone had a light because no one had a camera phone yet, and it was awesome. And I went out and bought a bunch of her CDs afterwards. Amazing singer, and she's starting to come back now.
What's her name?
Crystal Lewis. She actually gave up some of her like her career because she wanted to raise her kids and see her kids grow up. That's an amazing
pretty
story.
noble.
Yeah. So that doesn't always happen today.
Right.
All right. And so we take a look at what he says is, I know that my Redeemer lives. And in the end, he will stand. Okay, that's huge right there. I don't want to go too far in depth on that one. But Dave, he is trying to say God is sovereign in all of this and not me. I'm not going to ask the questions of him of like I have to be in charge.
God will do what he wants when he wants, and I trust in him.
He still wants to know why. But, I mean, he is saying God is God. All right?
I think that's a human thing. Everybody wants answers all the time, but you're not always going to get them.
And this is a difficult thing because
Well,
he's
yeah, he's
destroying Job's entire life. He's destroying everything. And Job's like...
And we have hindsight. We can see what happens to him in the end, but he's just like, how much lower can you go? He's pretty much on the bottom.
Yep. And everything is written for us to listen. That's part of the book, I believe. And so we're going to get into, we have a little over 5 minutes, Dave. So I'm not going to
Speed, Brown.
I'm not going to get too far into it, but we want to get into Job. All right, Job chapter 38. Okay, anyone who says God does not have a sense of humor has not read Job chapter 38. All right, Job chapter 38. All right, this is like God answering out of like the mouth of a tornado with all the lightning behind it, but at the same time, depending on whether or not you've heard this in a sermon, this is hilarious. I don't want to put that too far in out of context, but Dave, you want to read that for me?
Starting at 1?
Go to 7.
While the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy. Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb?
Whoa. Verse 1.
Oh, I thought you said
Verse
7.
1 to 7. 2 7.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, we'll start at 1. Then the Lord answered Job out of the storm. He said, Who is this that darkens my counsel? With words without knowledge, brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? Or who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy.
Okay, that right there is both awe-inspiring and hilarious. All right? Right there he's saying, okay, Job, you're asking me all these questions. All right, tell me how the earth rotates. How did it start spinning? What do you think of the earth in the midst of all these stars during creation? Tell me about it. Little guy like Job, and God's like, what do you think?
It's kind of like that joke where that guy's, I don't know if it's an atheist is having a contest with God, and they were going to try to make man, and the atheist goes to grab the dirt, and God said, "Get your own dirt." You haven't heard that one? Okay, some other time then.
Okay.
Mark gets it. Thank you, Mark.
I'm glad he's laughing. I'm just now I'm overanalyzing that just a little bit. Because Big Bang Theory with Sheldon, all right, even one of my own members of my congregation back in Michigan said that God opened up an interdimensional rift, took some molecules from that rift, closed it back up, took that, and then formed everything. And he was serious.
Watched Back to the Future a couple too many times, did he?
Yeah. Some people, even in the church, have views about how God did things, and the Big Bang Theory is one of those things where Sheldon believes in dimensions that are different than ours. All right, and that's in a lot of movies now. If you watch, there'll be characters. My son was watching a Spider-Man movie that there's 7 versions of Spider-Man or whatever because they all came into one dimension. All right, going back to this.
Gotcha.
All right, and you notice that Job here is brought down from a place where he, like you and I are talking face to face, and God's like saying, "Why are you trying to talk to me face to face? What do you really know?"
Can you picture God up in heaven speaking this? Do you think he might have got a little hot with him?
I don't want to picture God like
No,
this.
but I'm just saying.
Okay, on the other hand, what an amazing thing that God would actually answer him.
Yeah.
All right? I mean, going back to the Greek mythology, Zeus just took a lightning bolt and zap, and you're dead. He doesn't answer you. He doesn't let you learn. If the Greek gods, even the gods of some of the other religions around the world, you're dead. That's it. But Job is just wondering, and just think of the character of God that says that God would allow him to ask the questions. But God's like, you know what? Since you helped out with creation so much, tell me how where on this track can you ask me the questions? So yeah, so I love that part. And so when we talk about, let me get to my place, all right, because all of creation is talked about in chapter 38, and then you have even in like 31, do you see that? Can you bind the beautiful Pleiades? Can you loose the cords of Orion? All right, you
Going to the
recognize
stars?
those?
Yeah, constellations.
Yeah, it goes back to, for me, it's always Men in Black, and he looks at the stars, and you can pick out different shapes. Okay, so God is saying, I arranged those for you. And really interesting is if man calls them by a certain thing, and God says, okay, I'll let you name it. Okay, did you put those stars so that they line up like that? No? Really? All right. I just thought that was awesome that God calls all his creation. Like I put God in its dimension. Oh, and all the stars, all right, they're there, that you use to navigate. All right. And then as we get into, goodness gracious, where am I at, Dave? All right. So chapter 39. Verse 1, all right? It talks about, do you know when the mountain goats give birth? Do you watch when the doe bears her fawn? Do you count the months till they bear? Do you know? All right, he is talking about things, all right? If you can, don't go further than this point. This right here, even Pleiades and Orion, he's thinking about and mentioning things that Job knows. Don't go further than that. He's mentioning all these things that Job knows about, has personal attention to. He's not saying, hey, clear across the world, hey, what do you think of that pyramid? And Job's like, what pyramid?
So Job personally knows what he's talking about, and God's saying, well, when did you make that?
And God's saying, do you understand how all of creation has come together? Do you understand that yet? And so when we talk about what he's going to talk about next, because it's almost time to go.
Yep.
Oh, man, we were just getting to the good part, all right? So we're just getting that close to the good parts about what God creates with the mountain goats, with the bears, with these other types.
Baby mountain goats and baby bears.
Yeah, ostrich, all right? And so it talks about all these, the horse, the locust. He's mentioned all these things that he creates, and Job knows something about these creations, these creatures, all right? And then he's going to start rambling on in chapter 40 some stuff, and you're like, where'd that come from? But what we want to get at, and the first thing we'll pop up with next week, is that Job knows what God is talking about because he's personally seen them and knows a little bit about them. You know, he's seen the mountain goats, he's seen lions, he's seen all of those kind of
It's
things.
easier to talk to somebody when they've had experience with what you're talking about.
Yeah. He's not like, hey, have you seen a giant octopus? No, but I'll get back to you on that one, God. No, he's mentioned all these things that he knows. So he's building on what he already knows. All right, and that is crucial to chapter 40. We got to start at verse 1 next week. So if you want to read ahead at home, to start out next week, chapter 40, verse 1, and then we'll get into some really profound stuff. So anything for the audience?
Are we doing cheeseburgers this Sunday?
Cheeseburger this Sunday.
11.
About 11, hopefully. I'll still be in here, Dave.
No, you better go.
I'll be in here, Dave. All right.
Anything to get out of frying. Look at you.
What Dave is trying to say by saying 11:30 is he said, I'm going to preach a little bit long this week. Not knowing that this is, it is a communion Sunday, and it's probably going to go 50 minutes. So Dave is trying to, hold out hope that we can actually get through this. All right, so understandable. All right, 11:30, you can show up. What we really want to do is get people together on campus, so you can sit outside. If you want to bring your kids, you can also go to the playground afterwards.
It's a good time.
Yeah, it's not too bad out. It'll be 60s,
decent.
somewhere in there.
Maybe 50-ish something, but yeah, he can dress warm.
Yeah.
We're Minnesotans, right?
I wonder about that.
Even if you're from Texas.
Hey, I love this. I love this time. This is awesome. So yeah, all right, let's close this out.
All right. Lord God, Heavenly Father, thank you again for this beautiful day and the opportunity to get your word out through the internet. Please be with all the people in the community and our congregation that have lost loved ones in the past week. Watch over them and give them your comfort. And please be with all the folks that are lonely out there. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right, so until next week, he's Dave.
That's Matt.
And
We'll see ya.